Hello, and thanks for joining me once again for another Microsoft Ignite Roundup. Now, anytime there is a giant Microsoft conference, then there's nearly always a slew of updates and announcements and releases and things going in preview, things going GA, and today is exactly the same. We have loads of announcements we need to step through. Now, Microsoft are great in that they publish a giant book of news. So we're going to step through that book of news, we're going to pull out some of the important things, and we're going to mention two words a lot. Fabric and Copilot. They are all over the news, all over the announcements. That is generally what things are about. But there's lots of other stuff going on as well, so we'll take a dive into those. As always, the channel's brought to you by Advancing Analytics, a friendly neighborhood engineering, AI, and analytics consultancy. Get in touch if you need any help. If you're new around here, don't forget to like and subscribe. And then, yeah, let's start talking about things. So, absolutely, we cannot do this announcement without mentioning the fact that Microsoft Fabric has gone GA. That is generally available. Now, people kind of get confused what that means. That does not mean it is a finished, feature-complete product. That means that the things that are actually released now have production-grade SLAs, and you can use it in production without being worried it's going to break. That's the main point of GA, or if it does break, you can hold Microsoft accountable and say, this is not what I'm paying for. Also means you need to pay for it. There are still features that we're waiting to drop in Fabric that aren't quite released yet. If you're trying to integrate into a load of stuff you've got in an Azure data platform, and that data platform is heavily networked, that story's not great yet. So do not expect Fabric to be fully finished. It's not. They've been great and actually released a full roadmap of all the things we're going to see over the next few months, dropping as they are ready. There's things that are still in preview, things like Data Activator. It's one of the core workloads that's still in preview. That has not gone GA. So the platform's gone GA. Not everything is GA and not everything is finished. Just be very clear about those expectations going into it. But if you're using things like Power BI and Direct Lake over One Lake, that is all GA and has production-grade SLAs behind it now. If you've been waiting for that, go nuts. Start using it. It's actually now released. Cool. That is good. On the Copilot side, if you're playing the Copilot drinking game of, taking a sip every time they mention Copilot, you're going to be in for a bad time today because it was basically all over everything. So the main news is that essentially Microsoft have taken Copilot and went, we're just going to put it literally everywhere. And there's loads of things that we're now seeing either in public preview or released just all over the place with some nice clear guidelines about when other things are dropping. Sounds like a load of stuff's going live on the 1st of December, especially around the Teams integrations. A load of things on that side are being pushed out. So yeah, it's cool. So we're going to take a look at this thing, the big old Microsoft Ignite book of news. I'm going to have a step through. I'm going to call out the things that I feel are important. Now, I do recommend you take a look through this yourself. You might have different interests to me. You might care about some things that I don't care about. So take a look through, have a skim. I try to pull out a few things that are interesting for me. So yeah, we can have a skip through. There's lots of storytelling to get us excited about things. But the main things we're going to be talking about, we'll take a look at some of the ones in Azure in terms of the AI services. One or two things in compute, loads of things in data, hint, Fabric. One or two infra things, and then there's a new section for Copilot. Copilot now has its own section in the Book of Ignite because there are so many topics about it. We'll touch a little bit on that side of things, but absolutely, let's start with the AI side of things. So, a load of changes going into Azure machine learning. Now, some of those we've seen before. So things like prompt flow, we've done a video on prompt flow. That is the draggy, droppy flow builder for essentially doing prompt engineering over existing large language models. That's now baked into Azure Machine Learning, been wrapped up and announced and kind of gone through as part of the Ignite announcements. Now GA. You can now actually start using it in anger in some of your actual AI-driven applications. Just very, very cool. You've got the model catalog. Now, it's always funny because this is always similar to what Databricks have done in terms of their ML gateway, essentially kind of allowing you to pull together lots of models coming from loads of different kind of model hosts, as well as your own pre-built models. Lots and lots of things you can do in terms of finding existing models, evaluating them against each other, fine-tuning them, essentially a way of just managing your huge amount of models that you can actually use. Currently in preview, going to be GA soon. It's very, very cool. Models as a service, hosting models, hosted fine-tuning. We did a video on hosted fine-tuning. Really, really cool, although absolutely start with prompt engineering and see if you don't need to host your own, because you have to pay money to host your own, whereas it's far cheaper just ping and pay per click on the existing hosted ones. If you can get away with it through prompt engineering, if you can't, great. You've now got this ability to fine-tune your models and host it. That's all there. And obviously, with the release of Fabric, now some of these release notes are in a weird order because we're saying OneLake's now available as a preview store in Azure Machine Learning. Obviously, with the Fabric announcements, OneLake has gone GA, but that's later in the book of news to learn that it's available here. Anyway, if you've got data stored in Fabric's OneLake, you can now use that as a source in Azure Machine Learning. So, loads of cool stuff going on there. Absolutely not finished on the AI news. There's loads more. You've now got this Azure AI Studio. Seen various different iterations of this as it's kind of gone through different things. And again, just a slightly an evolution of their existing like the development environment for building out AI tools. There's lots of stuff you can do in there. Bring into Azure AI Search, which again is mentioned later, is the new name for Azure Cognitive Search. Lots of stuff going in. So take a look at that. I'm sure we'll do a video on that very soon. This is really cool. So you got the CCC, the customer copyright commitment, essentially saying, don't worry, you're not going to have copyright infringement when you're actually using a large language model, which is one of people's big fears about using generative AI. If I use DALL-E 3 and it makes an image and then someone sues me because it's too close to their image that it's copyrighted, that's a bad thing. I don't want that to happen. So things like this CCC and the expansion and kind of building it into the Azure OpenAI service, very, very cool. So actually sort of having a look at that and just building that in. The second piece, the Azure AI Content Safety, is really cool. So that is doing things like making sure if you've built a large language model, you've put an application together, you've put prompt flow to actually allow your app to interact with this model, and then it's coming back and it's swearing, it's using offensive language, it's innocent, it's just been trained on the wealth of internet data. How do you actually make sure that that is safe and you're not having to build in thousands and thousands of lines of interaction? You can turn on Azure AI Content Safety. We're already using that in some products or some clients, actually, where we've used prompt flow to help them do their first large language model driven applications. Just turn it on, and it'll actually put in things like moderation, harmful language, offensive language, all those things. Very, very cool. And that is now baked into that online service. A lot of stuff around AI vision. So we're doing kind of like sort of image recognition. We're doing kind of OCR kind of things. We're trying to do kind of just really, really fast like facial recognition, all that kind of stuff. Baked in, so a whole slew of new models and things around that. I've not dug too deep into what's going on, but if you've been trying to use things previously, wasn't quite doing what you need, there's a whole new generation of things that's worth actually taking a look at. Bunks into some of the things coming along as well. On the other side of vision-based AI, you've got the generators. So DALL-E 3, it's a similar, if you've not come across DALL-E, it's very similar to things like Mid-Journey, Stable Diffusion, that kind of thing. It is a generative image maker. And that's just, again, baked in. So if you want to be able to generate image, text, video, there's a new wave of things that are coming out through Azure's OpenAI. So DALL-E 3 is one of them. You've got the new LLM models with 3.5 Turbo and GPT-4 Turbo. GPT-4 Turbo with vision, allowing you to pass in images and things with your prompt and to actually be able to then return text based on whatever's in there. Doing all sorts of things like being able to give it a video and say, just summarize my video. There's more on that in a minute. Loads and loads of things. Again, the amount of innovation that is around the Azure OpenAI service is mad, frankly. Just all this new stuff coming out. And you see it then reflected in things like Copilot and its ability to look at your code, make better coding suggestions, or to summarize meetings you've been in. Loads of stuff happening over there. Other bits, again, baked into those improvements we're going to see in things like Teams, like task optimization surveys, and like new translation models, ability to recognize people, ability to generate voice using a customized voice, loads of things. So lots and lots of bits and pieces, just essentially just really, really improving how embedded AI is in all these services. The ones I was mentioning, things like being able to search where in a video something happened, being able to create text summaries of a video, being able to create a semantic search over that stuff. Loads of things happening. There's as I mentioned, what used to be called Azure Cognitive Search, which is where you can just give it a huge pile of your documentation and Word documents and PDFs and all that kind of thing, and it will create essentially vector embedding. So you can do a semantic search and go something like this, and it will find the Word document, the PDF that actually referenced that inside the text and say, this is the document you're asking for. This is the paragraph you should be looking at. That kind of stuff is now Azure AI Search. And there's, again, more and more things plugged into it. If you're trying to do things like retrieval augmented generation, and what you're trying to do is use an off-the-shelf large language model, but actually pass in some embedded context to avoid things like hallucinations, then things like Azure AI Search are great for doing that. That's what that vector search element is. So loads of things going in just to, again, help with people building out AI applications, embedding AI just into their normal workflows. Huge amounts of things being released on that side. And AI is the buzzword that things are happening on today. Gonna move past some of these ones. Want to pull a call out of that one. So obviously I do lots and lots of things with Databricks. You're familiar with that if you watch this channel. So there's a new type of VM we can do with confidential VMs. It's just like another level of encryption in terms of where the data is kept in between transit and rest. It's just to make sure things are absolutely protected. So if you're dealing with anyone who is working with incredibly sensitive data where the fact it's injected into a VNet inside a lockdown environment without public IPs is not enough, and it needs that additional level of security and confidentiality, you've now got this new type of VM that you can actually use as your Databricks clusters, which is, again, pretty cool. Then getting onto data. So lots and lots and lots of stuff we can do. Now, there's a bit of a mix because this is an alphabetic list of these releases. They're a bit in a weird thing. So things like doing shortcuts into OneLake from Amazon S3 are now generally available. Also, OneLake is generally available. But again, just forgive the order of these things. So yeah, if you are building out Fabric, and you have OneLake, and you have some data held inside Amazon in S3 buckets, you can just say, hey, just mount that onto my OneLake, make it look like it's part of my lake, and that will work quite nicely. With all of these things, everyone kind of forgets to mention, do be careful, because every time you access that data, you're going to be paying egress costs for your various cloud providers for it to leave whatever cloud providers it's in and come into the OneLake. If it's in the same region as Azure already, you're fine. Otherwise, there is some kind of egress costs. So whilst shortcuts are great, be a little bit careful, because your data's still having to, every time you query, it's having to move that data around. So be a little bit careful. AWS Gen 2 shortcuts are also generally available. Again, makes much more sense if they're all in the same region. You don't have to move things between any regions. That's good. Again, we've got another video coming probably tomorrow, which is going through in detail all the Fabric changes. So I'm going to skip fairly quickly through these ones. There's some changes in terms of Azure SQL. I don't do too much of that on the analytics side of things. Again, Microsoft 365 data now much more deeply integrated with OneLake, and that was what we used to see in Synapse. We had the Synapse link being able to kind of get the Dataverse thing and pull it over. Again, just being able to natively pull it down in Parquet. Delta Parquet. Delta, it's a Delta table. Being able to pull it over as a Delta table that's then available in OneLake to query just makes a lot of sense. That is good. There's the announcement. You kind of think would just be up at the top somewhere. So Microsoft Fabric itself is generally available. Again, word of warning, generally available, not finished, but generally available. Available with production guarantees, not an actual finished tool in all respects, because there's still things that are coming out, there's still things that are in preview that are part of it. Again, go watch the keynote on that. Go watch the various different things being announced on it. Again, some marketing around where it fits and how it fits in. Some changes to Cosmos in terms of how it's scaling and how it fits in. Copilot coming in. We'll talk more about Copilot in a minute. And then, yeah, so other pieces that we actually want to dig into on the data side of things. Let's just have a look. I mean, they're the main things that I've really been digging into. There's a few changes, either using MySQL, using Postgres. There are some changes that you can go and have a look at. Isn't something I get too involved in, so let's have a look at some other bits and pieces. Now, this is a big one, depending on where you are. So, training AI models requires GPUs, generally. The kind of training that it does, that like a large language model, that any kind of deep learning model needs, they go much faster if you use a GPU to do it. Now, most of the time we've just been using just generic GPUs and go, well, I'll take that GPU and I'll just run all my stuff on there. And that, one, it means it's fairly expensive to go be fighting with gamers and Bitcoin miners over who gets those GPUs. But two, they weren't really designed to do that kind of thing. So Microsoft have announced these special native chips specifically for training AI models for doing this kind of stuff. So you're going to see bits and pieces about Azure Maya and Azure Cobalt talking about these new chips. Mainly Maya is that AI accelerator chip, just to make these things go that much faster. Now that is a huge announcement because Microsoft have never really built their own chips before. They haven't really kind of come out and said, "Hey, this is the thing that we're doing." They're very, very cool, and obviously we're expecting to see things like the speed of training new large language models just be reducing and reducing because of the specialized chips starting to come onto the market and starting to get put into the various different data centers. So it's kind of cool. Lots of things. Another thing I want to pull out, just because I love the name of it, you've got the Azure AI Studio is now generally available. If you've never come across it, chaos engineering is a really interesting one of essentially testing the resilience of your platform by introducing certain problems, by introducing a network latency problem, a firewall blip, an outage of a certain core part of your component, essentially just making sure, is this thing going to stand up when the unexpected happens? So Chaos Studio is for controlling that in your environment and allowing it to build out certain scenarios to just interject and break things, which is really, really cool. My one thing I don't like is that they've got the keyword query language, KQL, which is the same as the custom query language in Azure Data Explorer, which is also called KQL. And come on, Microsoft, acronyms, get them right. But apart from that, it's very, very cool to see. There's lots of stuff inside of it. Okay, then there's general, the rest of the Microsoft, you've got 365, all those things. Do want to call out some of the Copilot announcements. So Copilot was the theme of so many of the things. There wasn't a single session I saw that didn't mention Copilot at least 50 times. But it makes sense because it's one of the big things, big trends of this year is literally all vendors putting AI guided assistants into their tools, and Microsoft is some of the most sophisticated we've seen. So it makes sense that they're talking about it and they're shouting about it so much. So obviously Fabric is a big one. We saw yesterday things like the Copilot experience for Power BI, and I believe there is a massive rush now of every single person using Power BI going, can I have it turned on? It is being rolled out. Not everyone has it yet. You'll see it eventually. I don't know the pricing of applying Copilot to all your various different tools. From what I've seen, it's generally an add-on for most things. I think Fabric is baked in, but don't quote me on that. Now, again, it's about turning it on your tenant. But doing things like saying, hey, actually, that's my data model and I've described it really well. Can you just build me a report that looks like this? And it builds a report off your own templates and theming. That's really cool. The ability to have like a text box that's just inside of your dashboard, which actually pulls out and goes, you might notice this time it's that figure that's a bit interesting. Here's the key drivers that made it. Here's what you should take away. Like that kind of semantic description of your data based on a large language model, based on the data as it runs. So cool. Really, really cool. And you're seeing things like that from Copilot being baked in. We're seeing things basically put in literally everywhere. So Copilot in Azure, being able to go and build various different things inside of Azure with Copilot enabled. Just essentially plugging it in literally everywhere. So they've got specific models for sale and service management and all that kind of stuff. Copilot for sales, about how to, essentially on the CRM side of things, they're kind of just making it easier to manage for people and just baked in all over the place. The one that's super interesting, actually it's all super interesting, but actually when we get down to things, when we're talking about things like in 365, so talking about seeing Copilot in Word and in PowerPoint, seeing Copilot in Teams, just so many new features that are just gonna start dropping into certain versions of these products, which is great. So one, Copilot dashboard, just to help you looking at the rollout and see where you get it coming out and kind of where it's enabled, where it's not enabled, and give you a bit of control over it. Copilot in Teams is insane. So all things like you can currently just turn on transcriptions. If you're in a meeting, you can hit record and say, oh, just transcribe. And it's quite good at identifying speakers and saying, well, likely this person said that, this person said that. Great. But then having it so actually instead of that, alongside that, it also just produces a summary, shares a summary with everyone, highlights various actions for people, and just books in calendar invites for the next one if you agree there's a follow-up. Includes documents that you said should be there and goes, actually, here's a document for reference based on what we said we'd talk about. that kind of stuff is just insane productivity drivers, which is really, really cool. The one that I hadn't seen that I love and also just worried is replacing me is this thing. So takes notes during a Teams meeting, great. But then next year it's going to be able to take what you're talking about, be whiteboarding it as you speak, and then save it down as a whiteboard and share it to everyone. I mean, that's literally what I do as a consultant. That is insane that we're getting to that point when it's just going to start happening, which is so cool. So again, loads and loads of these features. There's lots and lots of things at Ignite are demoing this stuff, showing you what it looks like, telling you how that story works, and pulling it out. Again, in Outlook, you're about to go into a meeting. Here's what you should know about it. You've mentioned a meeting in that meeting. We'll book the next one for you. So many things that Copilot is getting plugged into. Again, I realized I'm saying Copilot just as much as the people in Ignite were saying Copilot. There's a lot. There is a lot going on. And honestly, they're the main things I wanted to pull out. That is the main things I wanted to talk about. Just to say, well, one, yes, fanfare. Fabric is now live. Fabric is GA. You can go out and use it. If you're using the workloads that are marked as in production, they are marked as GA, you can now start using them in anger. If you get to a certain use case, you might find that feature hasn't dropped yet. Check out the roadmap. There's a big detailed roadmap and everything that's going on. This GA announcement came with a huge number of additional releases. There is a giant pack of November updates for Fabric that has been released that we need to walk through. So there's a separate video talking specifically about Fabric, and there's probably a separate video to that talking specifically about all those news items that have dropped into Fabric to align with the GA this November. And yeah, tons and tons of stuff in there. Outside of that, just the rapid pace of the AI developer experience, the AI engineering that's there, improvements in prompt engineering and semantic search through vector models, all those things. There's just huge amounts of it happening, and just check out some of those sessions. There's a ton of stuff going on there. And then, yeah, obviously Copilot, all the things. Like, give it a year, and how many of these things we'll just take for granted because Copilot would just be baked into Office, baked into Teams, baked into Outlook. And which go, yeah, I mean, of course it summarized the email and told me what I need to read. I don't read everything. Do you read things? We don't read things anymore. How old are you? How long until that becomes norm? I don't know, but it's interesting. So they are the main key takeaways that we've seen from Microsoft Ignite. Again, I will share the link for the book of news down below. If you're new around here, of course, don't forget to like and subscribe and let me know what your takeaways were. I've not watched all the sessions. If there's a session that you were like, actually, you should go watch that session because it was bloody awesome, then let me know and I'll go and have a look and we'll see what we think. And yeah, as always, if there's anything Advanced Analytics can do to help you on your journey with any of the AI things or any of the Fabric things, then give us a shout. Otherwise, I'll catch you next time. Cheers.